Have you ever wondered why some gardens are absolutely overflowing with giant, juicy raspberries, while others barely produce a handful of tiny, sour fruits? Today, we are talking about the ultimate spring secret that will completely change your harvest. I'm going to show you how just one single cup of a special mixture, applied in the month of April, can guarantee you a literal sea of berries this summer. You are going to learn a trick so surprisingly simple, you will wonder why you have never done it before. But here is the hook. Most people think you need expensive, complicated chemical fertilizers to get a massive yield. That is actually completely wrong. In fact, doing less, but doing it at the exact right moment is the real secret. By the end of this video, you will discover the hidden truth about how raspberry roots actually feed and why April is your only window of opportunity to make this happen. Tell me in the comments right now, what is your biggest struggle when it comes to growing berries in your backyard? To understand why this method works so well, we have to look at the history and nature of the raspberry bush. These plants are incredibly resilient woodland survivors. For thousands of years, they grew in the wild, thriving on the natural decay of forest leaves and wood. They never needed human intervention to produce fruit. However, when we bring them into our manicured backyards, we often strip away their natural feeding environment. We plant them in plain dirt and expect miracles. The key to unlocking their genetic potential lies in understanding their life cycle. Raspberries wake up very early in the spring. By the time April rolls around, depending on your exact climate, the soil begins to warm up and the roots start aggressively searching for energy. If they do not find the specific nutrients they need during this critical awakening phase, the plant will focus only on survival, not on producing fruit. That is why the month of April is the absolute turning point for your entire summer harvest. Let us start by looking closely at the awakening of the root system in early spring. When the snow melts and the ground temperature slowly rises above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, a massive biological alarm clock goes off underground. The roots of your raspberry bushes transition from a state of deep winter dormancy into active, aggressive foraging. They send out tiny, microscopic feeder roots that explore the surrounding soil like a network of hungry veins. This is the exact moment when the plant determines how much energy it will have to create blossoms and eventually fruit. If the soil is empty of accessible nutrients right now, the plant makes a biological decision to conserve energy. It will grow leaves to survive, but it will severely limit its berry production. Imagine a bear waking up from hibernation and finding the forest completely empty of food. It will become weak. That is your plant in unfertilized soil. The one-cup method we are about to discuss delivers an instant, easily digestible burst of energy right when these tiny feeder roots are most desperate for it. Now let us bust a very common and dangerous gardening myth, the myth of over-fertilizing in the spring. Many home gardeners believe that if they dump pounds of heavy, synthetic, store-bought fertilizer around their bushes in April, they will force the plant to grow huge. This is incredibly harmful. Synthetic fertilizers are essentially harsh salts. When you apply too much of them early in the season, you actually burn those delicate, newly awakened feeder roots we just talked about. It is like forcing someone to drink hot sauce when they are terribly thirsty. Instead of absorbing nutrients, the plant goes into a state of shock. It pulls water out of its own tissues to dilute the chemical salts in the soil. This stunts the growth of the canes and drastically reduces your summer yield. Our one-cup method completely avoids this problem. Because it uses purely natural organic components, it works with the soil biology, not against it. It gently feeds the plant without any risk of chemical root burn. To really appreciate why this one cup is so powerful, you need to understand the anatomy of the raspberry bush itself. Raspberries are unique because their root system is perennial, meaning it lives for many years, but their canes are biennial, meaning they only live for 2 years. The first-year canes, called prima canes, grow green and leafy. The second-year canes, called floricanes, have bark, and are the ones that will produce the majority of your fruit this summer. In April, the plant is doing double duty. It is trying to push energy up into the old floricanes to prepare for flowering, while simultaneously trying to push new primocanes out of the ground for next year. This requires a massive amount of balanced energy. If the plant only gets nitrogen, it will grow huge green leaves but no fruit. If it gets the wrong balance, the canes will be thin and weak. The specific ingredients in our single cup provide the perfect ratio of potassium, calcium, and trace minerals to support both the old canes and the new growth simultaneously. So why is April the magic month for this specific treatment? It all comes down to the flow of sap inside the plant. In late winter, the sap is stored deep down in the root crown, safely below the frost line. As April brings longer days and warmer sunshine, that sap begins to flow upwards through the canes like an elevator carrying supplies to the top floors of a building. If you wait until May or June to feed your raspberries, you have missed the elevator. The sap has already travelled up, the flower buds have already formed their basic structure, and the potential yield has already been locked in. Applying nutrients too late is like trying to add flour to a cake that is already baking in the oven. It just does not work. By pouring our nutrient-dense cup in April, we are loading the fertilizer directly into the sap stream right as it begins its upward journey. Every single leaf and bud will benefit from this perfectly timed delivery. Let us finally reveal the concept of the magic one cup. We are not talking about a magical potion from a fairy tale. We are talking about a highly concentrated, biologically active mixture that mimics the rich, decaying forest floor where raspberries naturally evolved. The core of this one cup is plain, natural wood ash. Yes, wood ash from your fireplace, fire pit or wood stove. But there is a catch. It must be pure wood ash, absolutely free from any plastics, glossy paper or treated lumber. Why wood ash? Because it is incredibly rich in potassium, phosphorus, calcium and magnesium. Potassium is the absolute most important element for fruit production. It is the mineral that tells the plant to make more blossoms, and it is what makes the berries sweet and juicy. However, wood ash alone is very alkaline and can be powdery and hard for the soil to absorb quickly. That is why we do not just dump dry ash on the ground. We have to prepare it in a very specific way. To make the wood ash work its magic instantly in April, we need to combine it with a biological activator. This is where the second ingredient comes in. You need an organic acid to balance the high pH of the ash and make the nutrients water-soluble. The best way to do this is by mixing the ash with a small amount of organic compost tea, or even just plain white vinegar diluted heavily in water. Let us look at a fantastic example. If you take 1 cup of pure wood ash and mix it into a 10-gallon bucket of rainwater, and then add just 1 single cup of ordinary white vinegar, a chemical reaction occurs. You will see it bubble slightly. The acetic acid in the vinegar reacts with the calcium carbonate in the ash. This reaction instantly unlocks the potassium and phosphorus, transforming them from a solid, unusable state into a liquid, highly absorbable liquid form. This creates an energy drink for your plants that is ready to be consumed the very second it touches the soil. Now let us talk about the water you use to create this mixture. This is a detail that many gardeners overlook, but it is crucial for success. You should never use water straight from the city tap if you can avoid it. City water contains chlorine and chloramine, which are specifically designed to kill bacteria. While this is great for drinking water, it is terrible for the beneficial bacteria living in your garden soil. These soil microbes are your best friends. They help transport the nutrients from our wood ash mixture directly into the raspberry roots. If you pour chlorinated water over them, you wipe out a large portion of this helpful workforce. The best practice is to use collected rainwater. If you do not have rainwater, simply fill a large bucket with tap water and let it sit uncovered outside for at least 24 hours. The chlorine will naturally evaporate into the air as a gas. Then you can safely mix in your wood ash and create your magical cup of fertilizer. Let us walk through the exact preparation process step by step so you get it perfect. First, you measure out exactly 1 cup of fine sifted wood ash. Make sure there are no large chunks of charcoal in it, as those take years to break down. Pour this 1 cup of ash into a large watering can or a standard bucket. Next, pour in about 2 gallons of your clean, unchlorinated water. Stir it vigorously with a long stick. The water will turn a murky grey colour. Now, if your soil naturally has a high pH or is very chalky, you should add that half cup of plain white vinegar we mentioned earlier to balance it out. If your soil is naturally acidic, like in many pine forest regions, you can skip the vinegar. Let this mixture steep for about 1 hour. This waiting period is important because it allows the heavy, unusable particles to sink to the bottom, while the rich, dissolved nutrients stay suspended in the water. You are essentially brewing a strong cup of potassium tea for your garden. The next vital step is the application zone. Where exactly do you pour this mixture? One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is pouring fertilizer directly onto the base of the plant, right where the stems meet the dirt. This area is called the crown, and it is very sensitive to moisture and highly concentrated nutrients. Pouring liquid here can cause crown rot, which will kill the entire plant. Instead, you need to find the drip line. Imagine your raspberry bush is an umbrella. When it rains, the water falls off the edges of the umbrella and hits the ground in a circle around you. That circle is the drip line, and it is exactly where the plant grows its most active, thirsty feeder roots. For a typical raspberry bush, the drip line is about 12 to 18 inches away from the main stems. You want to slowly pour your 1 cup wood ash mixture in a wide circle around the plant, right along this invisible drip line. Let us examine the immediate aftermath of pouring the mixture. What actually happens underground? As soon as the liquid hits the earth, capillary action takes over. The soil acts like a giant sponge, pulling the nutrient-rich water downward. Because we dissolved the wood ash, the potassium and phosphorus do not get stuck on the surface. They travel down 4 to 6 inches deep, right into the root zone. Within 24 hours, the tiny root hairs detect this influx of minerals. They begin to absorb the liquid rapidly. The potassium is rushed up into the canes, fortifying the cell walls and preparing the buds to burst into massive clusters of flowers. You have just saved the plant weeks of hard work trying to extract these elements from cold, stubborn spring soil. By providing it in a pre-digested, liquid format, you give the plant a massive head start on the growing season. This is the core reason why the harvest becomes so abundant. After you have applied your magical liquid mixture, there is one mandatory follow-up step. You must lock the moisture into the ground. If you leave the soil bare and exposed to the April sun and wind, the water will evaporate quickly, leaving the dissolved nutrients trapped in dry dirt where the roots cannot reach them. The solution is mulching. You need to apply a 2 to 3 inch layer of organic mulch over the entire root zone, completely covering the area where you just poured the fertilizer. Wood chips, straw, or even shredded autumn leaves work perfectly for this. Mulch acts like a protective blanket. It regulates the soil temperature, keeping it warm during cool April nights and cool during hot afternoons. More importantly, it stops evaporation, ensuring that the roots have days or even weeks to slowly drink up every single drop of the wood ash tea you provided. Bare soil is a crime in organic gardening, especially after a spring feeding. Let us talk about the environment surrounding the plant, specifically sunlight. Our 1 cup method provides the raw building blocks for a massive harvest, but the plant still needs an energy source to process those blocks. That energy source is the sun. Raspberries require a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every single day to produce heavy yields. If your bushes are planted in deep shade, even the best fertilizer in the world will not force them to fruit properly. In April, before the large trees completely leaf out, take a good look at the sun exposure in your berry patch. If there are overhanging branches from nearby trees blocking the morning sun, consider pruning them back. Morning sun is especially critical because it dries the dew off the raspberry leaves quickly, which prevents fungal diseases. By combining our nutrient-dense wood ash cup with maximum sunlight exposure, You are creating the absolute perfect storm for explosive berry growth. It is time to bust another myth. The idea that store-bought blue powder chemical fertilizers are somehow scientifically superior to natural methods. Many people think that because a box says maximum yield in big letters, it must be the best choice. Here is the truth. Those chemical powders feed the plant, but they slowly destroy the soil. They are made of synthetic salts that kill earthworms and beneficial bacteria. Over time, your soil becomes a lifeless sponge that only holds up the plant, requiring you to buy more and more chemicals every year just to keep the plant alive. It is an addiction cycle for your garden. Our 1-cup wood-ash method is the complete opposite. It feeds the plant while simultaneously enriching the soil web. The calcium in the ash sweetens the soil and provides a perfect habitat for microbes. It is the difference between eating fast food for a quick burst of energy versus eating a highly nutritious, home-cooked meal that builds long-term health. If you apply this method in April, what should you look for in May? How do you know it is working? The first sign of success will be the colour and size of the leaves. As the new leaves unfurl on the canes, you want to see a deep, vibrant, dark green colour. If a raspberry plant is lacking nutrients, the leaves will often look pale green or even yellowish, with dark green veins. This condition is called chlorosis, and it means the plant is struggling to produce chlorophyll. Because our April treatment provided a massive dose of readily available minerals, your leaves should look incredibly healthy and thick. Furthermore, you will notice the new primer canes shooting up from the ground with immense vigour. They will be thicker and stronger than previous years. These thick canes are crucial because next year they will be the ones holding up massive clusters of berries. The results of this simple 1-cup trick are highly visible within just 3 to 4 weeks. As we move into late spring, the next critical phase begins, the flowering stage. Because you provided such a rich supply of potassium in April, your bushes will produce significantly more flower clusters than usual. But flowers do not automatically become berries. They must be pollinated. This is where our garden friends, the bees, come into play. A healthy, well-fed raspberry bush produces nectar that is actually sweeter and more attractive to pollinators. The strong scent and bright white colour of the abundant blossoms will draw bees from miles away. It is absolutely vital that you do not spray any pesticides on or near your bushes during this time. Even organic sprays can harm bees if applied directly to the flowers. Let nature do its work. Every single flower that is visited by a bee will turn into a plump, perfectly formed raspberry. The more flowers you force the plant to make in April, the more bees will visit in May and June. During the period when the flowers are dropping their petals and the tiny green berries are starting to form, water becomes the most critical element. The plant is taking the nutrients from the soil and pumping them full of water to create the juicy fruit we all love. If the plant experiences a severe drought during fruit set, it will panic and drop the berries before they ripen to save itself. This is where your watering strategy must be perfect. You need to water deeply and infrequently, rather than giving the plants a light sprinkle every day. A light daily sprinkle only wets the top inch of soil, encouraging the roots to stay dangerously close to the surface where they dry out quickly. Instead, you want to run a soaker hose or drip irrigation system for a full hour, once or twice a week, depending on rain. This deep watering trains the roots to reach far down into the cool, moist earth, right where our wood-ash nutrients are waiting for them. Let us address a common challenge that arises in early spring: pests. The raspberry beetle is a notorious enemy that loves to lay its eggs inside the forming blossoms. The larvae then hatch and eat the berry from the inside out, ruining your harvest. However, there is a fascinating defense mechanism at play here. When a plant is highly nourished and completely unstressed, like yours will be after the 1-cup treatment, it produces complex biochemical compounds in its sap that actually deter many pests. Insects are naturally drawn to weak, struggling plants. By supercharging the health of your bushes in April, you're building an invisible armour against pest infestations. If you do notice a few beetles, a simple and organic solution is to plant companion plants nearby. Garlic and onions emit strong sulfur odours that confuse and repel pests. Planting a border of garlic around your berry patch is an excellent natural way to protect the massive harvest you are building. Another massive benefit of the potassium and calcium provided by our 1-cup method is increased disease resistance. Raspberries are highly susceptible to fungal diseases like botrytis, also known as grey mould, and various types of cane blight. These fungi thrive in damp, cool spring weather. Fungal spores land on the leaves and try to penetrate the cell walls. When a plant is deficient in calcium, its cell walls are thin and weak, making it very easy for the fungus to invade. The wood ash we applied in April is loaded with calcium. The plant absorbs this and uses it like bricks and mortar to build incredibly strong, thick cell walls. This physical barrier makes it extremely difficult for fungal spores to take hold. You are essentially fortifying the castle walls of your plant before the enemy even attacks. Combined with proper pruning to ensure good air circulation, this nutrient boost will keep your plants green and healthy all season long. Imagine a visual comparison between two identical raspberry bushes planted right next to each other. Bush A is left alone, perhaps given a handful of chemical fertilizer in late May. Bush B is given our specific 1-cup wood ash treatment in early April, properly diluted and poured along the drip line. By mid-July, the difference will be staggering. Bush A will have thin, floppy canes that bend under the weight of a modest harvest. The berries might be small and slightly crumbly. Bush B, however, will look like a completely different species. The canes will be thick as tree branches, standing tall and proud. The leaves will be massive and dark green. And the fruit, Bush B, will be absolutely loaded with giant, firm, intensely sweet berries. The clusters will be so heavy you might even need to tie them to a trellis. This is not magic. It is simple, targeted plant biology. By giving the plant exactly what it wants, right when it wakes up, you unlock its maximum genetic potential. As we approach the summer harvest, you need to be prepared for the sheer volume of fruit you are about to receive. Because of that single cup poured in April, you will not just be picking a bowl of berries for a quick snack. You will be harvesting buckets upon buckets. You will need to prepare your freezer, get your jam jars sterilised, and warn your neighbours that you will be dropping off baskets of fresh fruit. When picking the berries, do it early in the morning when it is cool, and gently pull them from the core. A perfectly ripe raspberry will slide off its white centre receptacle with almost zero resistance. If you have to tug it, it needs another day. The flavour of these organically fed, potassium-rich berries will blow away anything you can buy in a grocery store. They will be complex, floral, and deeply sweet. This incredible reward is the direct result of understanding the plant's life cycle and taking 5 minutes in early spring to care for it properly. So, there you have it. The absolute climax of your gardening season is entirely dependent on what you do in the crisp days of spring. By mixing just 1 cup of pure wood ash into water and pouring it around the drip line of your bushes in April, you are delivering a perfectly timed explosion of potassium and calcium right as the roots wake up. This simple, natural method builds stronger canes, triggers massive flower production, and ultimately guarantees you a sea of the sweetest, juiciest raspberries you have ever tasted. It is cheap, it is organic, and it absolutely works. Thank you so much for watching and learning with us today. If you found this secret helpful, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a big like. It really helps the channel grow. Now I have a question for you to answer in the comments below. Have you ever used wood ash in your garden before? And what were your results? Let us start a discussion down there. Happy gardening and enjoy your massive harvest.